So as I'm recording this video, Cloud9 is about to go on a trip of about 8 weeks where they will compete in virtually 8 lands back to back. It begins with them, like I said, departing today. Many of them are to head to Europe because they are going to compete in the Gfinity Summer Masters 1 event. From there, they will be heading on to ESCA LAN, then ESWC, then the Face It DreamHack Valencia merger event. Then, of course, it's the Civo MLG Pro League event after that. Then they will try to qualify for ESL 1 Cologne, the major, and the North American qualifiers that they're going to have. And then they will go back to Europe to compete in another Gfinity event. And then if they qualify, obviously, for the major, then right after that Gfinity event, they would then possibly boot camp for a little bit and then go and compete in the major, like I said, if they do, in fact, qualify for it. So as you can see, this team is about to go on a very long trip. A lot of traveling, a lot of tournaments. And by the end of this 8 weeks, I think we really will know exactly what Cloud9 is made of. So that's part of the reason why I titled this "The Long Road" is the sheer busyness of their schedule. I mean, I don't think a North American team in CS:GO has ever tried to pack in this many events in this short of time. I mean, it's 8 weeks straight of international tournaments. So definitely, something we haven't seen from a North American team yet as far as the amount of participation they're going to have in high-level competition. It's also been a long road to where they are today. Obviously the middle and end of 2014 and even like the first couple of months of 2015 have been a tough time for Cloud9. A slumping phase, not being able to get out of groups in a major for the first time, having one of their worst placements ever whenever they placed last at the previous ESCA LAN season 18. Obviously, we've seen roster changes happen a couple of times throughout these kind of slumping phases. How bad the slump really was is up for debate. I think I take a more optimistic approach, while some really do just hammer away, say, wow, this team's really bad, really awful. But the bottom line is that they certainly did have a tough journey to get where they are today. And I think where they are today is probably in one of the best positions the core group of players have had on this team, at least within domestic play, within their regional competition. Obviously, we've only seen this five play at one LAN event, which was the Gfinity Spring Masters 2 event not too long ago. I guess it was about a month ago or so. And obviously, while they did crush Immunity, kind of a weaker Australian team, once they went up against the European teams like Virtus Pro and Envious and such, they weren't able to get a single map. Had like one close map, but pretty much out of the 6 maps they played against Europeans, at least 4 or 5 of them were quite one-sided losses. So definitely not a very promising result, I guess you could say. Though the team was only together for a very short time since that tournament started. Not only that, but they had Freakazoid, who hadn't really competed seriously, hadn't been to a LAN in like a year and a half or longer than that. So there was definitely a lot of things stacked up against Cloud9 at that particular event. And so I don't think that people should be horribly disappointed in the result. But let's talk a little bit about where Cloud9 is now. I don't want to harp too much on the history and in the past. I want to maybe talk a little bit about where Cloud9 is now, coming from that. And I did write an article in regards to this a bit whenever the iBuyPower Invitational was going on. There was some team preview articles, and I did write a piece about Cloud9. And I will link that in the description if you're interested in reading about it, because some of the stuff I say in this video will kind of relate to some of the things I wrote in that article, or it might just be a rehash of it, really, in some cases. But essentially, Cloud9 have done excellent since coming back from the Spring Masters 2 event. They have really dominated the region. I think it's very, very much solidified that they are the top team in North America right now. I guess you could argue that because Keed Stars has come over and competed in the ESCA Pro League, that maybe they're kind of competing for Cloud9 with number one. It certainly is debatable who really is the best team in that league. The two are very, very close together. I think they've traded wins on one another in the regular season. They both have really amazing records. They're ranked 1 and 2, so there could be some debate there. But if you're just focusing on just true North American teams, whereas obviously Stars is from Brazil, so they're not technically a North American team, then yeah, I think Cloud9 has kind of firmly placed themselves at the top for the most part. I know Liquid has challenged them quite well in different instances, but I do think Cloud9 since pretty well on top. I mean, they are 19-3 in the ESEA ESL Pro League, first place. Even when the complexity in Cloud9 guys were doing well at LAN events, they always did still sometimes kind of struggle online, or they at least didn't dominate online. The team that was always dominating online was like iBuyPower, and those guys. Whereas Cloud9 and Complexity, they would probably get second or third seed in the LAN, but they wouldn't have like this dominant online record. And here we have Cloud9 playing in probably one of the most competitive online seasons I've seen, because there's just so many matches being played, yet they pulled off a 19-3 record and took first place. So definitely looked really sharp there. When you look at them in the CEVO MLG Pro League, they've had to play best of twos against all the top North American teams. They have tied a couple of best of twos, once to Luminosity and then once to Method, which was kind of an outlier result that is maybe a bit disappointing. But other than that, they've 2-0'd Liquid in this league very convincingly. I might have had some very one-sided map wins on Cash and Overpass. They've 2-0'd CLG on Dust 2 and Train, 2-0'd Nylum. They've 2-0'd Elevate, just beating all these teams without too much trouble. Then when you look at the Faceit standings as they currently sit, it is once again Cloud9 pretty much sitting firmly at top. They have 10 matches played. They're 8-2. I think one of their losses comes to Liquid. I'm not sure where the other one comes from. Maybe both map losses come from Liquid because you play each team twice. Yeah, I think that's what it is. So, but still sitting firmly at top, looking to qualify for that LAN that I just spoke of with DreamHack Valencia earlier. So once again, sitting firmly in top. And then you look at some of their other results. You look at the HTC Invitational Tournament, which they actually won. Getting past teams like CLG and like Liquid to win that event. They won that event quite convincingly, actually. I think they dropped a map to CLG, but they 2-0'd Liquid pretty convincingly, as I said. So, good result there. When you look at the ESWC USA qualifiers, yes, Liquid did beat them in the finals, but it was a very close series. I mean, it was a very close first map on Train that Liquid won. Then it was Cloud9 who just kind of blitzed Liquid on Overpass. And then the last map, Cash, was, I believe, a 16-13 game, of course, in favor of Liquid because they didn't win the qualifier. But it was Cloud9 who had to use a stand-in for that map. And typically I don't let stand-ins really affect too much how I think about a result unless the result is quite close. Like if it was a blowout, then I would say the stand-in probably didn't really have too much to do with it. Cloud9 was probably going to lose no matter what. I mean, they got completely blown out. But in this situation, with it being a 16-13 win, it's definitely debatable, and you definitely could make a good case for the fact that with their proper 5, Cloud9 probably did stand a pretty good chance of winning that last map and actually just straight up qualifying. Though they later got invited to the ESWC main tournament anyway, so I guess no harm, no foul there. And yes, Liquid does get the head-to-head result here, but it does kind of have that asterisk or that footnote to it, that this stand-in situation played a big role in that. Then you look at the iBuyPower Invitational. Liquid did just straight up beat Cloud9 in this event, pretty convincingly. So like I said, Liquid and Cloud9 do have kind of a cool rivalry going on, but I still do think Cloud9 has firmly established themselves as #1 team in North America, and I think even people like Adren and some of these other players from Liquid would probably agree with me. In fact, I was talking to Adren about what we think the NA rankings are on his stream the other night. We were just talking about it with his viewers and stuff like that, and we both kind of agreed that if you take Stars out of the equation, since they aren't truly a North American team, that, Cloud9 #1, Liquid probably #2. Then you have like Luminosity, CLG, kind of fighting for #3. I think you could go either way with that. The other one would, of course, be 4th. And then once you get to 5th place, that's when you start talking about teams like Nylum, like Elevate, maybe Tempo Storm, some of these other teams in the league. So basically what I'm getting at here is this is kind of the story of Cloud9's progression. And Cloud9 really went from a team that was really struggling, placing last place at the last ESCA LAN, to a team that is now, based on the results that we have from all this online play, establish themselves as being the top team in the region. And I think that's an important first step to being able to compete internationally is being able to at least hold on to the reins of your own region, being able to climb to the top against all the other, good teams within your continent or country or what have you, and firmly establishing yourself at the top. I think that's kind of step one. I think for too long we've had a bunch of good teams in North America, but we never really had one dominant team, one team that really rose to the top, firmly placed themselves there, and then put themselves, because of that, in good position to represent the country or continent internationally. This is something that teams like iBuyPower were able to do in the past, and that's why they at least were able to represent the country internationally, get invited to events, and even place well at some of them, like the Face It event, for example, where they took second to Fnatic. Or ESWC, where they once again were able to make it out of groups and kind of place there near the top. Though they never did make it out of groups in a major. So there is that. But even then, like I said, Complexity was always kind of firmly placed right below iBuyPower, or sometimes they would be ahead of iBuyPower. Then they would go internationally, and they would have at least top 8 results at majors and some other, good results at international lands. So we haven't had that for a while. A team established themselves at the top, and now we do with Cloud9. So that's just a thought of their progression in the rankings and their results. They're quite good. They're looking really, really sharp. And so going into these international tournaments, obviously all this stuff I'm saying could be completely irrelevant because it's all regional results, and maybe they never can actually convert that into international success. We'll just have to see over the course of these next 8 weeks. We'll learn a lot. But just talk a little bit about the progression of the team besides just results, just talking about them a little bit tactically and talking a little bit about just from watching them play and what I'm seeing, because results and stats tell you one thing, but then watching them actually play is a whole other thing. And it's one of the big things that Cloud9 have going for them when you compare them to the rest of the teams on the continent. Obviously, just the amount of skill on the team is big in comparison to most teams, but I think that they do have some of the best set roles on the team. I watch many of these teams play. I watch many demos, to have my knowledge right, or I just watch a lot just for fun when I'm watching, games being streamed, or, I'm commentating a lot of these games when it comes to some of these different tournaments I've mentioned, as well as the CVMLG Pro League. So I see a lot, and when I watch all these teams, for me, Cloud9 just like I said, has the best established roles. On many teams, it might be a different person going in first or a different group of people. Some teams have like 3 entry fraggers, and so you never really know who's actually going to be the one taking the charge and trying to take the site while everyone else kind of falls into their own place in their own roles. Or some teams have people who will op a lot on one map, but then on another map, they're rifling a lot. It's like map situational type stuff. But I really do think that Cloud9, you look at them, Freakazoid's going to be in first wherever you're attacking, or whatever it's priority to you to get control over. Skadoodle's going to be opping whenever you're going to have an op, and he's going to be able to open up so much on the T side with it. Really good picks. On CT side, he's going to be able to anchor a site or play mid or just do whatever you want. The dude's super versatile, also a good rifler as well, so he's going to be playing that role. Sean, in-game leader, sometimes plays a support role depending on the execute, but many times can serve as kind of one of the lurkers on the team. Nothing on mini maps will also serve as a lurker. I'm thinking of maps like D2 where he'll kind of lurk the B side of the map while Sean's kind of lurking long. So when there is 2 solo positions to play on a map, depending on the setup, it is Nothing and Sean Gares. Overpass, another example where Sean kind of alone inside the stairs, Nothing playing and lurking outside the B. These are, of course, just default setups. Obviously, things change when you have audibles being called or mid-round adjustments or different set executes that you want to play, then things do certainly change up. But either way, you can really see the roles here. And one big person I haven't talked about yet was Shroud. And for the longest time, Shroud was considered just kind of this passive rifler, a great side anchor, probably one of the best side anchors in North America. I'm thinking especially of how he was able to hold the pit or hold the A-bomb site on Inferno. Just does such a great job with that. You could, talk about other maps as well, but that's kind of the biggest example that comes to my mind right away. I know he also kind of anchors the A-bomb site at Pit and stuff, and Long A on Dust 2, very big with that. Quite big, kind of playing towards the A-bomb site on Cache. These are some of the team's strongest maps, and he does become a big factor on the CT side of many of these maps that I've just mentioned because of his just ability to be a passive rifler and hold stuff down. However, he has gotten a lot more aggressive lately, and I think that Sean has found better ways to implement Shroud in actually taking areas on the map, actually executing sites. And so you do very often see now Freakazoid, of course, still the main entry fragger, still the first person into a site, but very often now it is Shroud following up Freakazoid. I kind of noticed this whenever I was watching their games, and so I asked Sean about it. I was like, hey, man, I've been watching your games. I've been noticing that Shroud's in a much more active role and executes than he used to be. He used to kind of be maybe off to the side, kind of just a support player, just a passive rifler to come in late round and try to clutch it up. Sometimes he would even be lurking every now and then, but, I've been noticing he's really, like I said, the second, third guy into the site, really getting you entries into the site, and Sean basically told me that, yeah, I've just been watching him streaming and watching him play, and I see his explosiveness, I see his ability and his aim, and so now I rely on, Freakazoid to go in first, figure out where people are, maybe get an entry, maybe open things up, but then be able to relay that information to Shroud. Shroud now knows where people are, and he can go in there and he can just use his accuracy to clean up these spots. And you see this very often, like up mid on Inferno with Freakazoid, while or just up mid sometimes by himself while Freakazoid and Nothing are kind of working B. So this is just one example. I also see it on A executes on Cash. You see it when they're going up Cat on Dust 2. Just his ability to help them actually open up sides. So now he's not just that passive rifle, that super strong CT player. Now he is an active part of how they execute and enter sites and get entries. So Shroud's role has certainly evolved on this team, and I think he's in a much better place to have an impact. I mean, people have always regarded this guy as having really sick game, maybe being one of the best in North America just because of his ability to frag. His decision-making is usually quite good, especially in clutch situations, and now they're finding a way to take that skill set and put it to better use or get more out of it. And so that is definitely one big change that you might notice whenever you're watching them play some of these LAN tournaments, as opposed to the last LAN you saw them at, the Spring Masters 2 event of Gfinity. So definitely be on the lookout for this, and let's either make or break the team. Let's see what Shroud's made of, because he's going to be relying on a lot now when it comes to these entry roles. And obviously Freakazoid's a guy, statistically speaking, who has struggled at times for this team, but he will always play his role at the entry fragger position. He doesn't get deterred by a bad individual performance, or he doesn't let, when things get tough, stop him from playing his role. He doesn't let it get to his head. He doesn't lose his composure. This is especially the case on LAN. On LAN, I feel he's a better player than he is online. He thrives in that environment, and so I think that's really big for Cloud9. Even if he's not necessarily putting up crazy numbers, he's playing his role the same way every time, not letting anything shake him or stop him from doing his job, which is great in keeping these roles so solidified on the team, which really drives overall success, I feel like. So, be on the lookout for those two guys. I think Freak does have to play a good game, but he doesn't have to be a star. He just needs to do his job and let Shroud kind of do that, let him clean up. At least this is how I feel about things on the terrorist side. But like I said, we'll have to see. And obviously Skadoodle, a guy who is a great opper, the best opper in North America, not just because of his opping skills, but because he is so versatile. When he picks up a rifle when you can't afford an op, he still can have a huge impact. He's still one of the best riflers, just in general in the region. Many oppers can't claim that. At least within North America. So big role there as well on T-sides, opening up picks and helping out the team. And I think Shroud and Skadoodle really are the two keys here on this team being successful internationally. They have to play well. I have seen events where Shroud's fallen off a bit. I have seen events where Skadoodle hasn't looked as amazing as we're used to seeing him, but they need to be good for this team to be great, so to speak. Now, I will make a quick word about Nothing as well. I know a lot of people have criticized Nothing, saying that yes, he can have these series or these maps where he looks amazing, dropping high 20s, low 30 bombs. I think the event that comes right to mind right now is whenever he played against Virtus Pro at one of the ESCA lands with Complexity. He just looked absolutely out of his mind. I think that was season 15 or season 16 ESCA land. He was just lights out. I know he played really, really well, and it was one of those cups that Similar and Anders were running. Can't remember what it's called. Some King of the Hill type event. For whatever reason, the name doesn't come to me right now. Either way, I know they played in one of those tournaments prior to a major, and he looked really sharp at that event as well. And he's had different stints of time where he's looked really good. However, I have to say, statistically speaking, this has been one of Nothing's best online seasons of play with like SIVO and ESEA. He's always had pretty decent stats online, but this has been by far his best. Like his ADR, his FPI, all these different stats are higher than what they have been in the past. And just watching him play, this is one of the longest runs of time where his form has been really good. Like I said, there's been different times in his career where he'd be good, for, like really sick for like a couple of weeks or maybe a couple of events, but then maybe he would drop off a little bit. Whereas, like I said, over the past couple of months, watching all of their online play, I know it's just online play, but as I said, even in online play, he would sometimes drop off. But like I said, over the past couple of months, he's had one of the longest runs of good form I've seen out of him in his entire CSGO career, and that obviously bodes well for the team. I mean, sometimes he's serving lurking positions, sometimes he's helping with the executes, one of their main rotators on CT side, rotating between sites just like, Freakazoid can be. Very excellent player. He's been doing great. So let's see if he can keep that up. Obviously, you can't expect 100% of the roster to be 100% all the time, but if he can at least show some of this good form I'm talking about in these 8 weeks of tournaments, as well as Shroud looking a lot better, as well as the roles looking firmly established, I really do think this team has a good chance to at least make some noise in one of these 8 tournaments, if not more. I think they should be able to crack into like Thorin's top 10. I don't know how high they'll make it. I don't think they'll make like top 4 or top 5 or anything crazy like that, but I think they can at least kind of establish themselves back at least in like an 8th place position, and then from there we'll just see if they can go any higher than that. I'm sure it'll take time and more results to be able to get up, but I think we should see them, possibly making out of groups at some of these events coming up, and I could definitely see them qualifying for the major out of the North American region. And they're just growing. They're looking much better. To give one example, Inferno used to be one of this team's worst maps, mostly because their CT sides were so terrible. You would see them go up against teams and just get nothing done on the CT side, even though they would get like their 4 to 6 rounds on T side. On CT side, they would really, really struggle. This wasn't just an international competition either. This was against NA teams. I would see it happen. I think there was one game I watched them play. I think it was against Luminosity and ESEA or SIVO, where they got 3 or 4 rounds in the CT side first half of Inferno, and from there they just lost the game, right? And that was the very beginning of the year. But now we're seeing them have these monster CT sides on Inferno. In fact, Inferno has turned into one of their best maps. I want to say in the North American region, they have like in the 80s% win rate. I think they're like 12-2 or something like that. Just playing really, really good CS on this map now on the CT side. Shroud's always been good at holding that pit position, anchoring that A-bomb side. That's always been great, but they were kind of struggling elsewhere. Now the Arch side is firmly held down by Skadoodle's op, or Nothing playing that rotation position between the sites. They're just playing really, really well there. I could say there's still a bit of a weakness maybe at the B side. That's where Sean Gares and Freakazoid are playing. Every now and then you do maybe see Freakazoid get a bit too aggressive, overextend a bit too much. Sean maybe kind of out of position to bail him out when Freakazoid goes down. And if Freakazoid goes down, sometimes Sean also tries to step out and make a play to hold the site as best as he can while he waits for rotation to come in instead of dropping back to the site and just waiting and playing passive. And some of these decisions do kind of cripple their B side of the map at times, but in general, I'm seeing them crank out 10 plus rounds on CT side on a regular basis in their regional play, which is something they were struggling to do in the past. So that's just one example of a map they've really turned around, and they have a positive win rate on every map in the pool in regional play, besides Mirage, which is like their big ban map, right? I guess Cobble, they don't play very much, but when you watch them play Train, they're quite good. You watch them play Overpass, they're quite good. Obviously, their D2 can be good. And Cash has been their most played and their most successful map in the region, mostly because their T sides have just looked really, really good. They have some cool tactics there now. Their CT sides can still sometimes suffer a little bit, and there is that occasional outlier game where they get shut down by a strong CT side from a team like Liquid or something, but in general, they have a pretty well-rounded map pool as well. Now, do they just have a home map that we know they can win against top international teams? We don't know yet. I mean, yeah, Cash is a very strong map for them, but you look at teams like VP and Envious and some of these other teams, and they're really, really good at Cash. Mirage is obviously banned by C9. You look at Dust 2, that's a map they definitely could take against some top teams, I think. Outside of that, though, Overpass, we'd have to see. There's some really good Overpass teams out there besides them. Obviously, Cobble, some really good Cobble teams out there. So their map pool, they don't really have set maps they're definitely going to lock down, but I think they're pretty well rounded. So they'll at least be able to be competitive on pretty much any map that gets through, because I'm sure they'll just make sure they don't have to worry about playing Mirage or what have you. So that's just a brief look. I know it's actually kind of a long video, but just a brief look and a few examples of the long road that Cloud9's taken, the progression that they've made from going kind of a slumping phase to now dominating the region for the most part, besides the occasional game here or there where they get blown out. But for the most part, dominating the region, firmly atop the region now, expanding their map pool, improving some of the maps they were doing rather tough on, having some rather rough games and not showing much promise. The way that they've established the roles on the team, the way that they've really been able to find how to get the maximum and optimal use out of all their players. So the big example I gave was getting Shroud more involved in executes and engagements on the T side, but also just making sure everyone's in their role and it's consistent throughout all their games and all their rounds. I think one of the other big things I missed that I'll just hint at really quickly, because I know, like I said, I was about to cut this video off, was the fact that I think now they have one clear direction. With Sean Garrett's now being kind of the established leader on this team. Obviously, when Simphis on the team, there seemed to be a lot of conflict, a lot of calling over each other. Usually Simphis kind of winning, because it seemed like Sean was too timid to say no. He would kind of refuse to, really establish himself and kind of make Simphis calm down and not allow Simphis to overrule his calls or call over him. Now he doesn't have to worry about that. Yeah, sure, nothing will give his input and he'll be an active voice. But I really do think that Sean will be the firm decision maker. He will be the ones calling the shots. His vision will be the one that is followed. So there won't be any conflict of the direction of the team. It is this vision of Sean Garrett, who is very gifted tactically, I feel like. Also very good at making reads and mid-round calls and things like that, and being able to be flexible. So I think that this could be very, very good. Now, granted, if his ideas aren't working or things are going down, is there going to be someone else who can take the reins and help him out and help steer the team back into the right direction? If he's on one side of the map doing things by himself as a lurker, is there another person on the other side of the map that can be an active enough voice to direct traffic and make sure things are going right on this side of the map while Sean's kind of holding out over here? That's yet to be determined. We'll just have to see how things look in the international play. But I think I've pretty much gone over all the different things I wanted to, for the most part, without making this video way too long, as far as talking about Cloud9's progression, the long trip they have ahead, and the journey that they've taken to get to this point to be a pretty solid team going into these events. But we'll just have to see just what they're made of whenever they actually start competing in these lands. So let's just stay tuned and see. I'm sure at the end of the 8 weeks, I'll probably do another video about Cloud9's streak of tournaments and how they did and where they sit now, and the pros and cons. I'll try to do a little bit of an analysis of the tournaments after they're over. And be on the lookout for more videos as well, folks. But thanks a lot. Hope you enjoyed, and see you next time.